Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are really getting into someone monumental for modern writing, a figure whose influence is apparently, quote, almost too familiar to be visible.
Yeah, we're talking Gustave Flaubert, French novelist, 19th century, 1821 to 1880, generally seen as, the guy for literary realism.
The technical founder, even, of the modern novel. But there's this huge contradiction, isn't there? This paradox.
Totally. He insisted the writer needed to be, invisible in the text. But the effort, the sheer grind to get that invisible quality, well, it led to him being called the martyr of style.
And that martyrdom, that's what we want to understand today. Why was it necessary? We're looking at what made him so revolutionary. It wasn't just Madame Bovary, the scandal.
Yeah.
It was how he wrote, his whole aesthetic.
Exactly. We've pulled together quite a bit on his life, his beliefs, some pretty radical ones, actually, and this incredibly painstaking process he had.
So for you listening, the goal here is to get a quick, solid understanding of the essential Flaubert. He's this hinge figure, really. Pulled literature kicking and screaming away from romanticism, all that subjective emotion.
And slammed it down into the cold, analytical objectivity that pretty much defines modern fiction.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. He's born in Rouen. His father's a big deal, a senior hospital surgeon.
Right. And Flaubert started writing really young, apparently 8 years old. Got a standard education, Lycée Pierre Corneille.
But the plan wasn't writing initially, it was law, right? He heads off to Paris around 1840.
Yeah, to study law. But Paris, not his scene. The sources paint him as a pretty indifferent student. He just found the city, the whole intellectual buzz, really quite distasteful.
It's interesting how fast he bailed on that traditional path. I mean, he's meeting people like Victor Hugo, literary giant.
But nope, just wasn't clicking for him.
Then comes the real turning point.
Yeah.
1846.
Yes. He has an attack of epilepsy, and that's it. He drops law completely, goes back home to the family place in Crosset near Rouen.
And that house, Crosset, becomes his whole world, his fortress, his lab.
His self-imposed prison, you could say. He basically stays there for the rest of his life.
So he becomes this recluse, this intense hermit figure. But politically, he wasn't quiet, despite pulling back physically.
Oh, not at all. He still felt things very strongly. He had this great phrase for himself, described himself as a romantic and liberal old dunce, vieille ganache romantique et libérale.
A romantic old dunce. I like that.
Yeah, and also an enraged liberal.
Yeah.
He absolutely hated despotism, any kind of authoritarian power, cheered on any protest against it.
So an isolationist on the outside, but inside.
A real political firebrand, yeah. A bundle of contradictions.
And that inner fire definitely comes through in his personal life. It really shatters that image of some dusty academic. His relationship with the poet Louise Calais, that was intense.
Very intense. 8 years, 1846 to 1854.
Yeah.
And crucially, their letters survived. So we get this incredible window into his thinking, his feelings. He also had a really important long-term friendship and correspondence with George Sand, the novelist.
And those letters reveal some, well, pretty stark views, especially about family.
Absolutely. This connects to his deep pessimism. He wrote to Calais in 1852 explaining exactly why he'd never have children. He said he wouldn't transmit to no one the aggravations and the disgrace of existence.
Wow. The aggravations and the disgrace of existence,
Yeah.
that's potent. It's not just sadness, it's like a philosophical rejection.
Exactly. A structural rejection of life itself, almost, which kind of feeds into his writing, that need for distance and control.
But here's another contradiction. This guy who rejected existence, who shut himself away in Crosset, he was also a serious traveler.
He really was. In 1849-50, he took this huge trip through the Middle East, Greece, Egypt, spent 5 weeks just in Istanbul.
These were just holidays, they were research trips.
Totally. He needed immersion. Like in 1858, he travels all the way to Carthage just to get the details right for his novel Salammbô. He had to see it, feel it, smell it. That commitment to accuracy was absolute.
And his travel writing.
Yeah.
It's incredibly frank.
Yeah.
About everything. Our sources mention how open he was about his sexual experiences.
Utterly open. He writes about sex with prostitutes, about contracting syphilis in Beirut, no shame, no judgment, just documentation.
Including quite detailed descriptions of encounters with male prostitutes, too, in Beirut and Egypt.
Yes. It's all part of the experience he's recording, with that same detached, almost clinical eye he later applied to his fiction. Experience first, judgment. Well, nowhere, really.
But life didn't spare him his own difficulties later on. The 1870s sound pretty rough.
Yeah, they were tough. Prussian soldiers actually occupied his house during the Franco-Prussian War. Then his mother died in 1872, And on top of that, he got hit with financial problems, big ones, because his niece's husband's business failed.
Just one blow after another.
It seems so. And then in 1880, he died fairly suddenly. Cerebral hemorrhage. He was only 58.
Such a turbulent life, this traveler, this rebel, this romantic old dunce. How does that guy become the invisible god in the text? That brings us to the technique, the sheer discipline involved.
Right. And this is really the core of it. Flaubert's genius, his legacy, it's rooted in his style, which he pursued with, almost religious dedication.
Scrupulous commitment, formal perfection, neutral presentation of reality. These are the watchwords.
Exactly. And the concept everyone points to is le mot juste, finding the right word.
Okay, but le mot juste, lots of writers want the right word. Why did it demand this martyrdom from him?
Right.
Why the solitude, the sacrifice? You look at Balzac, other realists before him, they churned out books.
That's the key difference. For Flaubert, le mot juste wasn't just about finding a good word or an elegant one. It was about finding the only word that was precise, objective, and rhythmically perfect for its place in the sentence. It was the tool for achieving total objectivity.
So it's like scientific precision applied to art.
Pretty much. He wanted a style rhythmic as verse, precise as the language of the sciences. And to get that, he had to strip out anything that smacked of the author's personality or opinion. No cliches, no vague descriptions, definitely no moralizing from on high.
And the effort involved. It's just staggering. You mentioned this earlier, working in sullen solitude, sometimes spending an entire week on a single page.
A single page. It's almost unbelievable. But it shows that his style, which reads so smoothly, so objectively, it wasn't effortless inspiration. It was pure, agonizing work and revision.
Which makes sense of his Fox analogy, then, about the author's role.
Exactly. An author in his book must be like God in the universe, present everywhere and visible nowhere. The work itself should be the authority, the author's feelings, their judgments, completely filtered out, the ultimate disappearing act.
So his slow output, the relatively few books he published compared to, say, Balzac or Zola, that wasn't a bug, it was a feature.
It was the feature. It was the necessary consequence of this intense devotion to the sentence, to perfection over quantity. And that's why the critic, Walter Pater, nailed it when he called him the martyr of style. It cost him everything.
Okay, let's talk about the books themselves. The big one, the one that made his name and nearly ruined him, was his debut, Madame Bovary.
Right. Took him 5 long years to write. Started appearing in installments, serialized in 1856.
And bam! Controversy. The government itself steps in.
Yeah, they hauled the publisher and Flaubert into court. The charge, immorality, basically for depicting adultery and the bleakness of provincial life too realistically, without condemning it enough.
But they got off, right?
They did. Acquitted in 1857, a big part of the defense was arguing that his objective style, his invisibility, meant he wasn't actually endorsing the behavior, just presenting it.
And when it came out as a book?
Huge success, massive reception. It became the literary event.
But not everything was an instant hit. There's that story about The Temptation of St. Anthony, the first version.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic. He finished it in 1849, super proud, reads it aloud to his 2 best friends, Bouillet and Ducamp, for 4 straight days.
4 days. And their reaction.
Brutal honesty. They basically told him, Gustave, throw this thing in the fire, forget the epic stuff for now, write about everyday life.
Ouch. What good advice.
The best advice. Probably pushed him directly towards Madame Bovary and his realist path. Though, he couldn't quite let St. Anthony go. He kept reworking it and finally published A Virgin much later in the 1870s.
Okay, so after Bovary and the historical novel Salammbô, he writes Sentimental Education. 7 years in the making, published 1869. This one's different again.
Very different. It draws a lot on his own youth, his time in Paris. It follows this young guy, Frédéric Moreau, through his romantic entanglements and, crucially, his political disillusionment around the failed revolution of 1848.
So, not a happy story.
Definitely not. It's this huge, sprawling portrait of failure, really. Social failure, personal failure. Nobody gets what they want. It's got that same cold, hard Flaubertian lens focused on the disappointments of a whole generation.
And his last big project, the one he didn't finish, Bouvard et Pécuchet.
Ah, yes. He thought this was going to be his masterpiece. A massive satire about 2 copy clerks who retire and decide to master, well, everything. Every field of human knowledge.
And how does that go for them?
Predictably, disastrously. It's meant to be this grand statement on the futility of knowledge, the endlessness of human stupidity and mediocrity. But he died before finishing it. The version published after his death got kind of lukewarm reviews at the time, but its ambition was just incredible.
So you add it all up, the martyrdom, the works, the controversies. What's the lasting impact? What
Yeah.
did this obsessive focus on style actually do for literature? James Wood put it incredibly well, didn't he?
He really did. Novelists should thank Flaubert the way poets thank spring. It all begins again with him. That sums it up pretty perfectly.
What would he begin exactly? What was the big invention?
It's the modern realist narrator. Think about novels before him, even realist ones like Balzac. You often have this chatty, omniscient narrator who tells you what characters are like, judges them, tells you how to feel.
Right, like the author leaning over your shoulder.
Exactly. Flaubert kicks that author out. His technique is about showing, not telling, using precise, objective details, what characters see, hear, do, and forcing you, the reader, to interpret, to judge, to feel. He shifts the moral work onto the reader by removing his own voice.
And that style, that detached observation through vivid detail, it's just everywhere now, isn't it?
It's basically the default mode for serious fiction. Yeah. And you see his influence so directly in the 20th century giants, like Kafka.
How so with Kafka?
Well, Kafka picks up Flaubert's trick of using almost legalistic or scientific language, very precise, very detached to describe things that are completely bizarre or nightmarish. You get this incredible ironic precision, but the author never steps in to say, oh, how terrible or how sad. It's pure Flaubert in that sense.
And it's not just novelists who are obsessed with him.
Oh, absolutely not. Philosophers, sociologists. They keep coming back to him because of the rigor, the sheer force of his aesthetic commitment.
Yeah.
Jean-Paul Sartre wrote this enormous multi-volume work, The Family Idiot, purely about Flaubert.
Wow, an entire massive work just on...
Yeah. And Mario Vargas Llosa wrote a whole book, The Perpetual Orgy, just celebrating the genius of Madame Bovary. His influence runs so deep because he fundamentally changed the craft of writing. Modern literature is, in so many ways, Flaubertian.
He really is that hinge, connecting the big emotions of romanticism to the cool, rigorous observation of modernism, all through this relentless devotion to finding the perfect way to say it.
Which brings us right back to that contradiction we started with, doesn't it? Flaubert the writer wanted to be invisible, godlike, detached. But Flaubert the man revealed in his letters his travels. He was passionate, opinionated, deeply pessimistic, lived through illness, graphic experiences.
The romantic old dunce was definitely still in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on. How much did achieving that perfect, objective style, that martyrdom, require Flaubert the man to actively suppress or maybe transform, channel that inner romantic turbulence?
Was the intense control of le mot juste, that cold rigor, maybe a way for him to impose order on a life that felt full of chaos, passion, and what he called disgrace?
It's a powerful idea, isn't it? That maybe the style wasn't just about control, maybe the style was the control itself. Something to think about.